At 80, I've seen a lot of life. But there's one decision I deeply regret. Selling my family home. It promised security and a simpler life. But the truth was, it cost me far more than I ever imagined. I remember the conversations, the well-meaning advice. Everyone said it was smart to downsize, to unlock that equity sitting in the house. My children, my financial advisor, they all painted a picture of freedom. Less burden, more money for travel, for hobbies. I believed them. I thought selling our home, the place where we raised our family, would be the most practical choice for my retirement. It seemed like the logical next step, a way to secure my future and ease the load. Perhaps you're considering this option, whether for yourself or a loved one. Maybe you feel the pressure to simplify, or you've been told it's the safest financial move. But before you take that irreversible step, I want to share 5 hard truths I wish someone had told me before I sold my home. Because the reality is, it's not just about convenience or money. It changes everything. Once it's gone, getting that sense of home back isn't as simple as you think. Stay with me until the end, because these lessons might surprise you, and they might be exactly what you need to hear before making a truly life-altering decision. Regret 1. Losing my tangible roots. The biggest shock after selling my family home wasn't the pile of papers or the endless calls from real estate agents. It was the moment I walked through my empty house for the very last time. The furniture was gone, the walls stripped of photographs and paintings. Dust motes danced in the sunlight where our Christmas tree once stood. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was an echo chamber. Every step I took amplified the silence, and I felt a profound sense of loss, like saying goodbye to a living, breathing entity that had held so much of my life within its walls. That was when the regret truly began to settle in. Now, in my smaller, unfamiliar apartment, that sense of loss is a daily companion. I remember reaching for my favorite ceramic mug this morning, only to find the generic one provided by the building. My old kitchen had a specific scent, a mix of my baking, simmering stews, and the faint, sweet smell of the rose bush outside the window. Here, it's just clean, sterile. I used to know exactly where everything was, even in the dark. Now, every drawer feels foreign, every cupboard a stranger. It's not just about the big things. It's the quiet absence of those small, comforting details, the worn armchair, the familiar creak of the floorboards, the perfect spot for my book. These little comforts, gathered over decades, were the threads that wove the fabric of my home, and now they're gone. And their absence leaves a constant, low thrum of displacement. But the loss runs deeper than just physical comforts. My home wasn't just walls and furniture. It was a living scrapbook, a repository of our family's entire history. The height marks on the kitchen doorframe, charting my children's growth. The faint stain on the living room carpet from my son's spilled grape juice on his 5th birthday. The garden where my husband and I spent countless afternoons, planning our future. Now, sitting on a park bench, scrolling through old photos on my phone. These memories feel untethered. They float, beautiful but abstract, without the physical spaces to ground them. It's like a story without a setting. When the backdrop is erased, the narrative of your life feels less real, less solid. It's a subtle form of erasure, and it makes remembering, truly feeling the past, an effort instead of an embrace. What happens to your memories when the very ground they were built upon is gone forever? And what about the future? Our home was the anchor for every family tradition. Christmas mornings, Thanksgiving feasts, summer barbecues in the backyard. They all happened there. Now, in this small apartment, trying to recreate that magic feels forced, almost awkward. My children and grandchildren visit, of course, but it's different. There's no sprawling table for everyone, no garden for the little ones to explore. We're often guests in their homes now, which is lovely, but it's not the same as hosting. It's hard to imagine new traditions taking root in a space that doesn't feel entirely mine, where every gathering feels like a careful arrangement rather than a spontaneous overflow of love. The absence of my home subtly, yet profoundly, unraveled the fabric of our family traditions. So I have to ask you, before you consider selling the place that holds your life's story, Have you truly considered the emotional cost of letting go? We talk so much about the financial benefits, the grewed equity we can unlock, the freedom we might gain. But what about the intangible value of those walls, those floors, that garden, the countless memories, the daily comforts, the feeling of rootedness that money simply cannot buy back? It's more than just bricks and mortar. It's the foundation of your identity, your history, your family's gathering place. Are you prepared to trade all that for a number in a bank account? Because once it's gone, you realize that some things are truly priceless, and their loss can leave a hollow space that no amount of financial freedom can ever fill. Regret number 2, feeling the echoes of family fade. At home, my old house was the undisputed hub. Holidays, birthdays, even just a Sunday barbecue, everyone knew where to go. The door was always open, the coffee pot always on. It was a place where memories were made without a single appointment ever being set. But once I sold it, that magnetism just vanished. Now, visits are planned, carefully scheduled around everyone else's lives. My children and grandchildren, they still love me, I know. But the ease, the spontaneity, the simple assumption that home was our home is gone. I often find myself looking at my calendar, seeing a blank space where bustling family used to be, and waiting for a call that may not come. The hardest part, perhaps, is seeing how it affected my grandchildren. I remember them at the old house, tumbling through the garden, their laughter echoing off the kitchen walls. My home was their playground, a place where they could truly be children, leaving toys scattered and fingerprints on the window panes. Here, in my small apartment, it's different. Their visits are shorter, often supervised, and confined to the living room or a nearby park. There's no sprawling lawn for hide and seek, no attic full of treasures to explore. It's not their space. I watch them, polite and quiet, and a pang hits me. They're missing out on the magic I once offered, and I'm missing out on their uninhibited joy. It's a quiet ache, realizing that a part of their childhood, and mine, was tied to those walls, and now it's just a memory. And then there's the subtle shift in my own role. I used to be the matriarch, the host, the one who orchestrated family gatherings. Now I'm a guest. When I visit my daughter's home, I sit politely, offer to help. But I'm always conscious that it's her's kitchen, her two Jules, her's kitchen way of doing things. I can't just put on a pot of coffee for everyone, or fetch a blanket for a sleepy grandchild. I can't offer the comfort and familiarity that I once could in my own space. It's a strange feeling, like being an outsider looking in on the very family I helped create. I don't want to be a burden, but without a home of my own, my ability to contribute, to nurture, to simply say myself within the family dynamic feels diminished. It's a silent, persistent feeling of being just a little bit out of place. Sometimes, late at night, the loneliness becomes a heavy blanket. My phone sits on the table, and I think about calling my son, my daughter, just to chat, to hear a familiar voice. But then I hesitate. What would I say? I'm lonely? I miss you? I don't want to sound needy, or like I'm complaining about the choices I made. They have their own lives, their own responsibilities. When you have a home, there's always a natural reason to call, a shared project or a plan for the weekend. But without that central hub, the reasons feel less substantial, and the fear of being too much can lead to a quiet, self-imposed isolation. I put the phone down, and the silence echoes, a reminder of the connections that slowly, almost imperceptibly, started to fray. So I ask you, are you prepared for this subtle erosion of family ties? Do you understand how much your home serves as a vital link, a physical anchor for your family's connection? We often think of our children and grandchildren as always being there, always understanding. But life gets in the way. Proximity and a shared space often foster connection in ways that aren't easily replaced by phone calls or planned visits to someone else's house. Before you sell, truly ask yourself, can money truly buy back the warmth of family connection? Because once that central gathering place is gone, you might find that the echoes of family gatherings grow fainter than you ever thought possible. I've told you about the emotional toll, the sense of loss, but there's one regret that hits close to the bone for many of us. The money. When I first sold my home, I remember the feeling of relief, even excitement. A substantial sum, sitting there in my retirement fund. It felt like I had finally achieved that elusive financial freedom everyone talks about. I thought, this is it, Eleanor. No more worries. But the truth, the hard, shocking truth, was that this nest egg, once so plump and promising, began to vanish faster than I ever thought possible. Suddenly, unexpected expenses popped up like weeds, and the cost of simply living seemed to inflate overnight. That initial sense of security? It was an illusion, a cruel trick of the light. The biggest drain, the one that truly surprised me, was rent. For decades, my home was paid off. The mortgage was a distant memory. Now, every single month, a significant chunk of my carefully saved funds simply disappeared. It's a never-ending cycle, a constant outflow with no end in sight. And it's not just the amount. It's the psychological burden. When you own your home, you have a fixed cost, a bedrock. But with rent, you're always at the mercy of the market, always aware that your monthly payment could climb, pushing you further into a corner. It creates a gnawing anxiety, a feeling of being perpetually vulnerable, a far cry from the freedom I was promised. Are you truly prepared for that endless drain on your resources? And it wasn't just the rent itself. There were so many hidden fees, so many compromises I hadn't anticipated. I couldn't just decide to repaint a wall or add a shelf. Every small change required permission, if it was even allowed. Moving meant security deposits, cleaning fees, and the unexpected costs of adapting to a smaller, less personal space. I found myself buying less at the grocery store, making choices I never had to before. My beautiful antique dining table wouldn't fit, so I had to buy a smaller one, another expense. It felt like I was constantly being nickel and dimed, slowly but surely chipping away at the savings I believed would last me comfortably. My quality of life wasn't just shrinking in space, but in opportunity too. Then there's the constant worry about the future. When you own your home, it's a tangible asset, a kind of safety net. If things get tough, you have options, but once it's gone, you're exposed. I find myself watching the news, seeing reports about the housing market, inflation, the economy, and a cold dread settles in. What if my investments falter? What if rent prices skyrocket even higher? I have no fallback, no fixed asset to lean on. That feeling of insecurity, of not having a solid foundation beneath you, is a heavy burden to carry in your later years. It's a fear that haunts you, making that promised financial freedom feel incredibly fragile. So I ask you, when you calculate your retirement fund, are you truly honest with yourself about how much is enough when you no longer have a home? Do you factor in the perpetual drain of rent, the hidden costs, and the gnawing anxiety of market instability? I thought I had done my homework, believed I had enough, but I severely underestimated the true cost of living without that solid foundation. Financial security without a home is a different, more precarious kind of freedom, one that can disappear quicker than you imagine. Before you sell, truly ask yourself, is that lump sum worth the constant worry and the daily compromises? Regret 4, the erosion of my identity and independence. When I decided to sell my home, I thought I was just downsizing my living space. I didn't realize I was also shrinking the space for my very self, for the things that made me. Shop. I used to love gardening. My old backyard was a riot of color, and I spent hours tending to my roses, my hands in the earth. Now I have a small balcony with a single potted plant, a sad reminder of what once was. My old toolbox sits dusty in a drawer, a half-finished woodworking project from years ago still there. My hands, once busy, now often lie idle. It's a frustrating feeling, a quiet wistfulness for the purposeful days I used to have. When your home is gone, where do your passions and sense of purpose go? My home wasn't just a place to live. It was a constant source of little projects, a canvas for my ingenuity, a leaky faucet, a squeaky door, a fresh coat of paint. These weren't chores, they were opportunities. Each small repair, each improvement, gave me a sense of accomplishment, a feeling of being capable and useful. My hands were always busy, my mind engaged in solving practical problems. But here, in this rented apartment, if something breaks, I call the landlord. If a light bulb needs changing, it's not my project to tackle, it's a request. At first, I thought it would be a relief, no more responsibilities. But that relief quickly turned into a subtle feeling of uselessness, a quiet kind of boredom. It's an unexpected downside, this loss of agency. The less I do, the less I feel like I can do, and the less I feel like myself. And then there's the subtle shift in how you see yourself and how others see you. For decades, I was Eleanor Vance, the woman who lived on Elm Street, the one with the vibrant garden, the one who hosted the neighborhood potlucks. I was a fixture, a known entity. But once you sell your home and move into a new community, especially a senior living complex, you become a resident, just another name on a list. I see it in the common room here, people sitting, observing, but rarely deeply connecting. Without the backdrop of my long-term home, the stories, the memories tied to a specific place, it's harder to establish who I am. I'm not just Eleanor anymore. I'm Eleanor, apartment 3B. It's a quiet struggle for recognition, a feeling of being an anonymous face in a sea of new ones. Are you ready to lose your unique identity and become just another resident? My old home had space, space to walk, space to breathe, space for my thoughts to wander. This apartment, while perfectly adequate, feels contained. I look at the same four walls every day. The view from my window is the same generic cityscape. The physical limitations of a smaller space have had a profound psychological impact. It feels like my world has shrunk, not just my living room. That sense of freedom, the ability to retreat into different parts of my own home, is gone. It's a feeling of confinement, a quiet desperation that sometimes creeps in. I find myself restless, pacing the small rooms, yearning for the expansiveness I once took for granted. The silent prison, how a smaller space can make your entire world shrink. So I ask you, what truly defines you? Is it your possessions, your hobbies, your community role, or the simple freedom of your own space? I often held on to the idea that stuff isn't everything, and it's true. But a home provides the framework for so much more than just shelter. It's the framework for your independence, your daily purpose, your identity. It's where you are, and in a profound way, it's a part of asterisk who you are. When you consider selling your home, are you truly prepared for what you might lose beyond the bricks and mortar? Is your sense of self tied to your home more than you realize? Because once that framework is gone, rebuilding your sense of self in a new, smaller world is a far greater challenge than you might imagine. When I first moved into this apartment, after selling my home, I told myself it was just for now. A temporary landing spot while I figured things out, found the right next place. I even bought a cheerful print to hang by the window, a small attempt to make it mine. But as the months turned into a year, and then 2, that temporary feeling started to solidify. I looked at that little picture, slightly crooked on the wall, and realized how futile my efforts felt. Finding a true home again, a place that resonated with my soul, was proving harder than I could have ever imagined. The illusion of choice, of endless possibilities, vanished, leaving me with the quiet despair of being stuck. I spent countless hours scrolling through online listings, hoping to find something that felt remotely like a home. But the reality of the housing market for seniors like me was stark. What was available often meant significant compromises. Places were too small, too far from my doctors, or lacked the sense of community I craved. And if they were appealing, they were often far beyond what my retirement fund could comfortably afford after rent. I'd see a lovely garden apartment, then realize it was a 2-hour drive from my daughter. Or a lively senior community, only to discover the monthly fees would eat through my savings faster than I could blink. It was disheartening, a constant reminder that my dream home was now a distant memory, replaced by a weary search for merely adequate. The greatest disappointment perhaps wasn't just the lack of options, but the constant weight of compromise. I found myself in an apartment complex where the social hour felt forced, a bland attempt at community that never quite gelled. I'd sit there, politely smiling, sipping lukewarm tea, trying to connect with strangers who felt just as out of place as I did. My old home had been a hub, a place where connections happened naturally. Here, I was choosing between affordability and privacy, between proximity to family and a space that truly felt like my own. Each choice felt like I was trading a piece of myself, settling for good enough instead of thriving. It was a constant, subtle sense of making do, and it slowly chipped away at my spirit. And then there's the subtle, unspoken shift in how you're perceived. When you own your home, there's a sense of rootedness, of having a fixed place in the world. But when I had to give my address for something, or mention that I was renting, I sometimes caught a flicker in people's eyes, a subtle judgment, a hint of underestimation. It wasn't overt, but it was there, a feeling that without my own home I was somehow less stable, less established. I remember a doctor's receptionist asking if I had family nearby, not out of concern, but almost as if my lack of a permanent address implied a lack of support. It added a quiet layer of insecurity, a feeling that I had lost not just my home, but a small part of my standing in the community. Ultimately, this fifth regret boils down to realizing that home is so much more than just bricks and mortar, or even a rental agreement. It's that deep, intangible feeling of belonging, of security, of being able to truly be yourself within your own four walls. I can put furniture in this apartment, hang pictures, and organize my things, but it never quite feels like jars my home. It's a place where I reside, certainly, but it lacks that deep resonance, that echo of a lifetime lived within its spaces. I ask you, truly, have you considered what that feeling is worth? Because once you give up your long-term home, the quest to recreate that elusive home feeling might be the hardest journey of all. Looking back, I thought selling my home was a single, temporary decision, a practical step towards a comfortable future. But what I didn't realize was that it wasn't just one step, it was a series of irreversible changes that chipped away at my life. I lost the tangible roots that anchored my memories and my family. My connection to my children and grandchildren subtly shifted, fading into formal visits instead of spontaneous gatherings. The illusion of financial freedom quickly evaporated, replaced by the relentless drain of rent and the fear of future instability. My sense of identity and purpose, once tied to the rhythms of my home, began to erode. And the dream of finding a new home proved far more elusive and compromised than I ever imagined. Each regret, small on its own, became a heavy stone in a growing pile, weighing down the very peace I sought. I don't regret wanting security, but I deeply regret not truly understanding the full cost of selling my home. It seemed like the easiest path, the most logical choice at the time. But before you take that step for yourself or a loved one, please don't rush this decision. Look beyond the numbers on a spreadsheet. Ask yourself, what emotional value does your home hold? How will its absence truly reshape your family connections? Are you prepared for the constant financial drain of renting and the feeling of losing your unique place in the world? Explore every alternative. Consider reverse mortgages, home care services, or modifications to your existing home. Your roots, your memories, your independence, they are worth fighting for. Prioritize your peace of mind, your sense of belonging, and the comfort of your familiar haven over a perceived financial gain that might prove to be an illusion. Because once your home is gone, getting that feeling back isn't as simple as you think. If you're still watching this video and found these insights valuable, please comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thank you for joining me today. I hope my regrets can help you avoid yours.